ready to unlock a superpower.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Today we're diving deep into motivation, that force that, well, pushes us towards our goals, gets us out of bed. It makes life happen.
It really does.
And, you've given us a ton of research on this, textbooks, studies, all about how our brains and bodies work together.
Yeah.
So our mission, by the end of this deep dive, is to basically build you a personalized motivation toolkit.
Oh, I love that. Like a life hack, but for your inner drive.
Exactly.
That's a great way to think about it.
So let's start with some basics.
Okay.
The research mentions this term, instrumental behaviors, which sounds very technical.
It does.
But basically it means how motivated you are isn't just a feeling, it's something we can actually measure by how you act.
Exactly. So like how quickly you jump into something, how often you do it, how much effort you put in each time, and of course, whether you stick with it for the long haul.
Right. So instead of just saying, I'm super motivated, you're actually proving it
Right.
through your actions.
Exactly. Love it. And those actions are driven by this really fascinating mix of internal and external factors.
Okay.
And that's where the idea of drives and incentives come in.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
We've all felt that internal push, that drive, like to eat when we're hungry
Yeah.
or grab a sweater when we're cold.
Absolutely.
It's like your body's like, hey, we need this.
Right. Like, take care of me.
Yes.
But then there's this pull from the outside world.
Okay.
The incentive. So think of like the smell of freshly baked cookies,
Ooh, yeah.
right? That smell, that's an incentive.
Okay.
It's a promise of like satisfaction that's pulling you in.
So you've got this like internal drive pushing you.
Yep.
And then the external incentive is kind of pulling you.
Yeah, it's like a tug of war.
A motivational tug of war. That's happening all the time.
All the time. And you know, what makes it even more interesting is that the strength of those drives and incentives, they can change depending on what state you're in at that time.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you're like really, really hungry, even a simple sandwich can be like the most amazing thing.
Oh, yeah. That explains a lot of my late night snacking, I think. But speaking of powerful forces,
Huh.
what about emotions? Because I was reading about how emotions aren't just something we feel, they actually fuel our motivation.
That's a great point. They really can turbocharge that motivational engine.
Yeah.
Fear, for instance. Fear is a really powerful motivator.
Right.
It's what keeps us from doing, dangerous things.
Keeps us safe.
Keeps us alive. It's like a primal instinct, fight or flight.
It's kept us alive for a long time, that's for sure.
It really has.
But then on the flip side, positive emotions. Those can be powerful incentives too.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about that feeling of accomplishment when you finish a tough project. Like that good feeling makes you want to go after that feeling again.
Totally. And that's what drives us to take on new challenges.
Yeah, our brains are wired to chase those good vibes. It's so interesting.
It really is.
Okay, so we've got these basic drives, we've got the pull of these incentives, the power of emotions, all shaping our motivation. But there's another layer to this.
Right.
What about those deeper psychological needs? The things that kind of drive us beyond just like staying alive and comfortable.
Yeah, you're talking about the need for things like belonging or
Yeah.
achievement, even power. And these needs are super fundamental to understanding what motivates us on a deeper level.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting because these needs aren't the same for everyone.
Absolutely. And that's a key point.
Right. Some people, they're driven by this deep need for achievement, always striving to be the best.
Yes.
Other people prioritize connection
Yeah.
and belonging,
Right.
and they're focused on building strong relationships.
And those individual differences in our needs are part of what makes you, you. It shapes your goals and your desires and ultimately what you're motivated to pursue.
It's not just our biology, it's our unique psychology too. And speaking of influence, we can't forget about the impact of our environment. The research is really emphasizing how our surroundings can impact our motivation
Big time.
in a big way.
Think about cultural norms, societal expectations, even just the physical space you're in. These things all send signals that can shape your drive.
It's like our environment's constantly sending us messages about what we should be motivated by. No wonder it can be hard to stay focused on our own goals.
That's why it's so important to be aware of those external influences and to make conscious choices about what truly matters to you.
Okay, so we're seeing this fascinating picture of motivation, this interplay of internal drives and external incentives, fueled by emotions, shaped by our unique needs in our environment. But there's more, right? We actually have some control over how we boost our motivation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how?
Well, one of the most powerful tools in our motivational toolkit is the ability to set effective goals.
Okay, goal setting. Seems simple enough, but the research really goes deep on this,
Mm.
talking about how the type of goal we set can make a huge difference in whether we actually achieve it.
Absolutely. A vague goal like be healthier, that's not nearly as motivating as a very specific goal. Like run a 5K in 3 months.
Okay.
And a goal that's too easy isn't going to give you the same drive as one that challenges you to push your limits.
So we need that sweet spot between achievable and challenging to really kind of light that fire.
Exactly. And here's another tip. The way you frame the goal in your mind, it really matters.
Okay.
Are you focused on achieving something positive or avoiding something negative?
Okay.
That subtle shift in perspective, it can make a big difference in how motivated you feel.
So we've got these internal drives, the pull of incentives, the fuel of emotions, the shaping power of our environment. Now we're adding the strategic tool of goal setting.
Yeah.
Our motivation toolkit's looking pretty good.
It is. But we can't forget the wild card, our individual personalities.
Ah, yes. Why do some people just seem naturally driven? And then others, they really struggle to find that spark.
Yeah. Personality plays a huge role in the motivation equation.
Okay.
Our individual traits influence how we perceive the world, what we find rewarding, and ultimately what we're motivated to pursue.
It's not a one-size-fits-all approach to motivation.
Yeah.
We each have our own, unique motivational style.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And understanding your own personality is like getting the instruction manual for your own motivational engine. Once you know what makes you tick, you can really tailor your strategies and set yourself up for success.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
But before we jump into all that personalizing and stuff, let's take a quick breather and recap what we've covered so far.
Yep.
We've explored the basic building blocks of motivation, right? From drives to incentives. We've seen how emotions act as this powerful fuel.
And we've highlighted the importance of understanding your unique psychological needs.
Right.
And how your environment can either support or sabotage your motivation. And we've introduced the power of setting SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
You've been given a lot of information about the science behind motivation in this deep dive so far. But the real magic happens when you apply this knowledge to your own life. Are you ready to delve into how this can actually help you achieve your goals and unlock your full potential?
Absolutely. Let's get into the how, the actionable stuff.
I love it. Let's do it.
One of the coolest things we've learned so far is that motivation, it isn't some fixed trait. It's not like, you either have it or you don't.
Okay.
It's more like a muscle
Okay.
that you can train
I like that.
and strengthen over time.
So instead of feeling stuck or helpless, when we lack motivation, we can actually use these insights to get ourselves back on track.
Exactly.
I like that.
So let's start with those internal drives we talked about. Remember, those are triggered by your basic needs. So if you're feeling sluggish and unmotivated, the first step is to check in with your body.
Okay.
Are you hungry? Thirsty? Did you get enough sleep?
Yeah, sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful.
They really are.
I know I've definitely had times where a good meal or a solid night's sleep has made a world of difference
Totally.
in my energy and my motivation.
It's like giving your body the fuel it needs to power up that motivation engine.
Yes, I like that.
But remember, we've also got those external incentives that can pull us toward our goals, too.
Right. So how do we make those work for us instead of against us?
This is where those SMART goals come in. When you set a clear, specific goal, you're essentially creating a powerful incentive for yourself.
Okay.
That desired outcome becomes the reward that's pulling you forward.
So it's not enough to just say, I want to be more organized.
No.
We need to define what that actually looks like.
Exactly. So maybe it's clean out my desk by Friday, or create a meal plan for the week.
Yeah.
Really specific.
Right.
And don't be afraid to break down those bigger goals
Right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Each small win, it becomes a mini incentive
Right.
that keeps you motivated and moving forward.
It's like creating a trail of motivational breadcrumbs.
Yes, I love that. Leading you to the ultimate goal.
Yes, to the prize.
That's great. And don't forget about the power of positive emotions.
Yeah, really good.
If you're dreading a task, find a way to make it more enjoyable.
Okay.
Put on some music you love, work in a nice environment, or team up with someone you enjoy spending time with.
Turn a chore into a treat.
Exactly.
That's great. Speaking of treats, Rewards.
Mhm.
The research talks about how rewarding ourselves for progress, even small wins, can really boost our motivation.
Absolutely. It's like those loyalty programs where you, like, rack up points
Oh, yeah.
for every
I
purchase.
love those.
Right. Those small rewards can add up, and they really motivate you to keep going.
Yeah, I'm all about racking up those motivation points.
Mm.
Okay, so let's talk about environment for a minute. We've talked about how it can influence our motivation.
Right.
But what are some practical ways to actually create an environment that supports our goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, start by decluttering your physical space. A clean, organized workspace,
Mm-hmm.
it can really do wonders for your focus
Yeah.
and motivation.
Oh, I could totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Like, clutter is like my kryptonite.
It's so distracting. Right. And then, don't underestimate the power of visual cues. Surround yourself with images or objects that represent your goals.
Okay.
You could create a vision board, post motivational quotes, or even just put up like a picture of yourself achieving something you're proud of.
Like giving your subconscious a little nudge.
Exactly. In the right direction. Those visual reminders, they can help keep your goals like top of mind
Yeah.
and fuel your motivation.
Okay, so we've got some great tips for leveraging drives, incentives,
Yeah.
even our environment to boost motivation.
Totally.
But what about those times when we're like really struggling? When even like the most tempting incentives or a perfectly organized workspace, they're just not doing it for us. Any advice for navigating those motivational slumps?
Yeah, I think the first step is to acknowledge
Okay.
that slumps are normal.
Okay.
Everybody experiences them.
So we shouldn't beat ourselves up if we're not feeling 100% motivated all the time.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good.
It's not a sign of weakness or failure. It's just part of being human.
That's part of the process.
It is. Be kind to yourself
Okay.
and try to figure out what's causing the slump.
Okay.
Are you feeling stressed, overwhelmed, burned out?
Okay.
Once you identify the root cause, you can start to address it.
So maybe it's taking a break or asking for help
Yeah.
or just adjusting expectations.
Sometimes even a simple change of scenery
Oh.
can do wonders. Go for a walk, work from a coffee shop, even rearrange your furniture.
Just like hit the refresh button.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On your environment
Right.
and your mindset.
I love it. But sometimes, even with all the right strategies in place, we can still kind of hit a wall.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we can do to like really tap into that deeper level of motivation?
This is where understanding your personality can be super helpful.
Okay.
Remember, we each have our own unique motivational style.
Right. Some people, they thrive on competition.
Mm.
Others, they're motivated by collaboration.
Absolutely.
Some need strict deadlines,
Yep.
while others need more flexibility.
Once you understand your own motivational style, you can really tailor your strategies to fit your personality.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you're someone who loves social interaction, don't try to force yourself to work in isolation all the time.
Right.
Find ways to incorporate collaboration and connection into your work.
It's all about playing to our strengths
Yeah.
and creating a motivational strategy that feels authentic to who we are.
Exactly. And, don't be afraid to experiment. What works for one person may not work for another.
Right.
The key is to be curious. Try new things. Find what really resonates with you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in terms of practical strategies for boosting motivation.
We have.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to explore some of the more nuanced, surprising aspects of how motivation actually works. Are you ready to go a little deeper?
Absolutely. Let's unravel some of the mysteries. Let's talk about something called alesthesia. It sounds kind of complicated.
It does.
But it's a pretty simple concept. Basically, it's the idea that how we experience something depends on our internal state at that moment.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Okay, so think about a glass of ice water
Okay.
when you're super thirsty on a hot day.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing, right?
The best.
But that same glass of water
Yeah.
might seem totally ordinary if you're already hydrated.
So our internal state, like our level of thirst, actually changes how we perceive that thing, that external stimulus.
Exactly. And it's not just water. This applies to all sorts of things. The taste of food, the comfort of a warm blanket, even the attractiveness of another person.
So what motivates you one day might be totally different the next,
Yeah.
depending on how you're feeling in that moment.
Exactly. Your motivation isn't static. It's constantly shifting, and being aware of your current state, like your energy levels, your emotions, your needs, that can really help you make choices that align with your goal.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, another concept I saw in the research was energy homeostasis.
Ooh, yes.
Sounds very sciencey.
It does.
But basically, it's about how our bodies regulate our energy, right? So our
Yes.
energy intake and expenditure.
Our bodies are really amazing machines,
They are.
constantly working to maintain this balance of energy. When we're running low, our motivation to seek out food increases.
Makes sense.
And when we've had enough, those hunger signals quiet down.
It's like our body has its own little internal motivation system, telling us when to fuel up, when to take a break.
Exactly. And it usually works pretty well. But, it's not foolproof. As we've talked about, things like stress and environmental cues, they can sometimes throw this delicate balance off.
Right, like when you're stressed and you find yourself reaching for the comfort food,
Exactly.
even though you're not physically hungry.
Yeah, or think about, how tempting a plate of freshly baked cookies can be,
Oh, yeah.
even if you just ate a big meal.
It's like we're constantly being bombarded with messages that influence our motivation.
All the time.
It's a lot.
It's a delicate dance between our biology, our psychology, and our environment. But, the more we understand how these forces work, the better we can manage our motivation and make conscious choices that support our well-being.
Okay, one last thing I want to touch on. This one kind of blew my mind a little bit. The research talks about how our unconscious mind can actually play a role in our motivation.
Ooh, yeah. This is where things get really interesting. We tend to think of motivation as this very conscious process, like setting a goal and making a plan.
Right.
But turns out a lot of our motivation happens below the surface of our awareness.
So it's not always about willpower
Right.
and like making these rational decisions.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're being driven by forces we don't even realize are there.
Exactly. For example, there are studies that have shown that people who are exposed to words related to achievement, even if they don't consciously register those words, they actually tend to perform better on tasks.
So even like subtle cues in our environment can activate these unconscious goals and like actually influence our behavior.
Exactly. Our minds are so complex, and they're constantly processing information, even when we're not aware of it. And that unconscious processing can have a huge impact on our motivation.
So we've explored the science, we built our motivational toolkit, we even like delved into some of these mind-bending mysteries of the unconscious. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important message is that motivation. It's a dynamic process, and it's something you can influence. By understanding those forces at play, like your biology, your psychology, your environment, you can become the architect of your own motivation and really create the life you want.
It's like we've been given this incredible map to navigate the world of motivation. Now it's up to each of us to, explore, experiment, find what works best for us.
Exactly. The journey of motivation is ongoing. There will be ups, there will be downs, moments of inspiration, moments of struggle. But by embracing that complexity and continuing to learn and grow, we can all master our own motivation and achieve amazing things.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of motivation. We hope you feel inspired and empowered to unlock your full potential. Until next time, stay curious and keep those motivation engines running.